You are listening to an After Dinner Conversation magazine podcast. After Dinner Conversation believes humanity is improved by ethics and morals grounded in philosophical truth, and that truth is discovered through intentional reflection and respectful debate. In order to facilitate this process, we have created a growing series of print books, a monthly short story magazine, and 2 different podcasts. This podcast, Philosophy, Ethics, Short Story Audiobooks, provides audiobook readings of stories that have appeared in our magazine, and our companion podcast, Philosophy, Ethics, Short Story Discussions, is where we discuss the ethics of the choices made in the stories as a way to model the kinds of discussions we hope you're having about these readings with friends, family, or students. I'm Colby, your narrator and the creator of After Dinner Conversation Publishing. Thank you for spending your time listening to our podcast and for reading the magazine. Thank you for supporting us through your magazine subscriptions and through patreon.com/After Dinner Conversation. And of course, if you enjoy this audiobook reading, please subscribe to our podcast, share it on social media, and suggest it to friends. We sure would appreciate it. Today's short story is called People Used to Die Every Day by Chad Baker. Okay, so tell me the truth. Why couldn't I get a hold of you last night? Samir folds his arms and stares at Peter across the little round table in the bar. I know you have class on Tuesday nights, but you get breaks. And it's not like you couldn't answer a text from class, Samir says. He has not yet taken one sip of his martini. So, where were you really? Peter feels a red flush of shame. He never meant to lie to Samir. At first, he rationalized not telling his boyfriend on the basis he was just trying it out, experimenting, curious. Maybe he wouldn't even like it. Maybe he'd only do it once, in which case it would hardly be worth mentioning, right? But he had done it 8 times. 8 wasn't experimenting. He did like it, and he didn't want to stop, and so now it was time to come clean. Peter glances at the table near them. It's just before midnight, and the gastro pub is filling up with Chicago's young professional crowd. Carefully tousled hair, sleek bodies, explosive laughs. On weekdays, this bar runs a happy hour special from 11 p.m. to 1 a.m. to bring in the after-work crowd just off their second shifts. Samir likes this place, but it makes Peter's head swim. His eyes keep getting pulled away by the 12 screens affixed above the bar and on the walls, which show a football game, music videos, a series of amateur clips in which people try to do a backflip and fall down. Peter doesn't think anyone is near enough to hear them, but still he lowers his voice and hunches over the shiny faux onyx tabletop so that his nose is almost in the beer stein when he says, I was sleeping. Samir's stony face gives no reaction except for a hot flare behind his dark eyes, or maybe Peter imagines that. After almost a year together, he's still not very good at reading Samir. Look, I wanted to tell you, but Samir holds up a palm to stop him. I'm not going to talk about this here. Let's just finish our drinks. They drink in their painful bubble of silence, sealed off from the commotion of the bar. Peter has never downed a beer faster. When the revolving door spits them out, Samir marches down the avenue of shops and restaurants with long, quick strides. Peter has to jog to catch up. His health implant pings his phone to tell him he's reached 0.07 BAC, and it will now release an alcohol antagonist. He had drank 2 swift beers before he came to the bar, trying to muster the courage to confess. Was it the first time, Samir asks? No. Samir opens his mouth but closes it again when he spots the couple with a toddler approaching on the tree-lined sidewalk. The little girl picks up burnt red maple leaves that just began to fall this week, collecting them. The incandescent street lamps bathe everything in a metallic white. They redid the lamps on this street last month, upping the wattage even more. Samir turns down a less busy side street. How many times? 8. Oh God, Peter! There's pity in his voice. Peter has been prepared for anger, surprise, mild concern maybe. But this, Samir's sad embarrassment for Peter, is much worse. It's not that big of a deal. A lot of people do it. A lot of losers, fat, unemployed losers who live with their parents, and he stops, put a thumb and forefinger to his closed eyes, which is not you, obviously. That's not what I mean. I never expected this from you. They pass one block of 2-story homes and orange-leafed oaks in silence. Living room windows frame families and couples on couches, awash in the flicker of screens. Peter breathes in the dry, crinkly scent of autumn. You've never been curious? Peter asks, once he can't bear the quiet any longer. What it's like? No more than I'm curious about what it's like to have tuberculosis or shit in an outhouse. We've solved those problems. Why would I want to go back? Samir and Peter are both in their late 20s, so they were born years after the neuropharmacological team at China's Tsinghua University synthesized somafrene and discovered that, in combination with a cocktail of other stimulants, proteins, and reuptake inhibitors, it will do everything for the human brain and body that sleep used to do. At first, the compound had to be taken daily in pill form, but after the rise of permanent health implants, somnifrene became a mandatory ingredient in everyone's monthly cartridge. So your new leadership class, Samir says, these Tuesday and Thursdays for the past month, that was all bullshit? I'm sorry. I needed, a reason that we weren't hanging out on those nights. That's what you were doing instead of actually taking a PCC? Samir, like most people in the couple circle of ambitious 20-something, is perpetually in a professional certification course. He's racked up 5 different PCs. It's not like I'm being irresponsible about it. I haven't missed work or anything. It's not affecting my life. But it did. I got huge news that I worked really hard for, and you weren't there. Yesterday, at the end of his shift, Samir learned that he had been promoted to account executive at his consulting firm. Shu Chen took me out for drinks, and a bunch of our friends came out to celebrate with me, and you weren't there because you were... He can't bring himself to say the word. I'm sorry, I really am. Obviously, if I had known you were going to get promoted, that's not the point. What is the point? God, I need another drink. After 2 more blocks, they arrive at Samir's building. When Samir approaches the front door, Peter lingers awkwardly on the sidewalk, unsure if he's supposed to follow. Well, Samir holds the door. Are you coming up or what? Samir's apartment is in a new high-rise built in the modern style. A small wardrobe room instead of a bedroom, a larger living room and dining room. He keeps the living room lightly furnished, preferring a wide open space for entertaining and VR gaming. Peter sits on one of the backless metal stools on the edge of the room while Samir makes 2 drinks in that cocktail machine some friends got him for his birthday. Samir hands Peter an old-fashioned. Have you thought about what could happen, Peter? Really thought. That shit's illegal. It's decriminalized in Illinois. Nobody actually goes to jail for it. You mean people like you don't go to jail for it? Nice upper-class white people. And what about your job? Don't they hair test? I think I signed some consent thing when I started, but they've never tested me. But he has heard of his supervisor Terry selecting employees for random hair follicle samples if they showed signs of fatigue, yawning, reddened eyes, lower call closure rates. But they might. You'd lose your job. I really don't care, he says, and Samir's eyes sharpen in shock. It's an awful job, babe. Peter works for a customer service contractor where he's currently assigned to placate upset users of the Go Zynga streaming media service. For instance, today he was harangued by a woman who had been, quote, permanently scarred after Go Zynga's recommendation algorithm suggested, based on the woman's habit of watching cooking shows, that she would enjoy Hard Boiled, a Go Zynga original series about a spunky chef who solves crimes. After she witnessed a grisly murder in the ultra-deaf virtual reality, Her stress hormones spiked so high that her implant had to release a sedative. She screamed at Peter for 19 minutes and 53 seconds. They're not supposed to let any call go over 20 minutes without manager approval. He came in just under the wire. Well, if you started a leadership PC, Samir says, like actually started one instead of lying about it, then you could probably move up. I don't want to move up. I don't want to move up. Not at that place. Sometimes I wish I got fired. Uh-huh. And how would you pay your rent or eat or pay your media subscriptions? Samir stands with one hand in the pocket of his slacks, sips his drink, and gazes out the bay window at the street below. So is that what this is about? You're unhappy at work? You're trying to escape or something? That's what going out is for, Peter. You could have escaped by doing shots at the Indigo Room with our friends. With me. We went out with our friends the night before, and then the wine painting thing the night before that. We're always doing something. It's sort of relentless. Don't you ever want to just do nothing? Samir gives him a sideways glance. No, I don't. My time is precious enough as it is, especially with the way they've been working me lately. Samir used to work traditional hours. A first shift, 8 a.m. to 1 p.m., a 4-hour break for midday, then back for the 5 p.m. to 11 p.m. shift. But in the past few months, he's been cutting into his midday and working past midnight, then rushing off to his PCC 3 times a week. For a moment, neither of them speaks. Peter gazes for the millionth time at the 3 paintings that make up the only ornamentation on the wide opposite wall. They are abstract and minimalist. In the center painting, 3 vertical streaks of violet run down the left side of the canvas, with only a small blue dot in the sea of white on the right side. Today, the dot looks to Peter like a body falling from a building. I'm sorry, he says. I didn't realize it would bother you this much. Are you going to keep doing it? He shrugs. I think I want to, yeah. I like the way it feels. My parents always said it doesn't feel like anything. It's just hours you don't remember, right? Not exactly. There's something really peaceful about it. It's hard to describe. But he tries anyway. As they finish their cocktails and Samir makes 2 more, Peter tries to describe the beauty of lying still, waiting for the strong, dark tide to sweep you away. He tries to describe the luminal zone that marks the gateway to sleep, where your thoughts expand and dissolve like billows of smoke. He tries to describe the tingly, confused afterglow of waking, but for some reason he cannot bring himself to admit, much less attempt to describe the part he likes best, the dreams. The odd thing is, it's not as if the dreams are always, or even usually, pleasant. Take, for example, the dream Peter has the next night, the night after the big fight with Samir. In one fragment of his dream, Peter comes home to his apartment only to find an unfamiliar young man and woman cuddling together on the couch. When he steps through his front door, they freeze and gape at him, like he's the intruder. Then Peter remembers that he fell behind in the rent and got evicted. This is not true in real life. With prickly horror, Peter realizes that this rosy-faced couple in their matching tracksuits are the new tenants. He's trespassing. He must have kept his key and gotten confused and come back. You need to go, the woman says, but Peter's already scrambling for the door. Then, as he's leaving, he finds a bag of Ched Heads, the poofy cheese snack, on the end table. But these are mine, right? He asks the couple, who are now on their feet, backing him to the door. I think I left these here. They're my favorite. The woman looks at him sadly and shakes her head. Either that's the end of the dream or the rest disappears when he's awoken. A bell sounds on the apartment speakers, followed by a gentle female voice that says, Samir's at the front door. On the living room screen, Samir stands on the sidewalk in his black coat, leather satchel snug against his hip. The corner of the screen says 12:33 a.m. At first, Peter doesn't move from the nest of couch cushions and blankets he's made on the floor. He tries to recall the dream. It alarmed him the first few times how easily the dreams slip from you, such a strange contrast to those first waking moments, when you not only remember the dream, but believe it. For a few dizzying seconds, Peter thought he actually had been evicted. He has found that by the time he stands up and takes even one step towards the bathroom, so much of a session's fragments and figments have vanished. Now, when he wakes, he makes sure to lie perfectly still and review the images, to store them in a more secure part of his memory. It's like trying to clutch rainwater in your hands. "Hello," Samir says, and the word reverberates through Peter's apartment. "Open lobby door," Peter says, his voice thick with sleep. He scrambles to replace the couch cushions and fold the 2 blankets before Samir reaches the 3rd floor. When Peter opens the front door, Samir has a bottle of red wine held out like a game show prize. Peter takes it, surprised. He hadn't expected a peace offering. He hadn't expected to see Samir at all tonight. Maybe not for a while. The wine is a good sign, and it sends a trickle of relief through Peter. "This will go well with Ethiopian, which is on its way," Samir breezes in, slips his coat on a hook, seats himself on the couch. "I had a good talk with Karen today." Karen is Samir's therapist of 6 years. Quote, "longest relationship of my life," he likes to joke. "She helped me reframe your, confession." "You told her about that?" "I tell her everything. She helped me remember that one of the reasons I love you," Samir stops, holds up a finger. "I love you" would have been a good place for me to start. Let's pretend I started with that. Karen and I are also working on expressing my feelings directly. I love you because you zig when other people zag, because you're true to yourself above all. I wrote down a bunch of these. We did an exercise. But the point is, wait, what's wrong with you? Peter realizes that his eyes must be blurry, his lids drooping. I just woke up. As he says it, a yawn sneaks up on him, and he can't stop himself in time. Oh. Samir's nod tries too hard to be casual. Well, what I was saying is, I reacted too harshly last night. I want to understand where you're coming from. Okay, thank you. I want to try it. What? If this is something that's important to you, I want to share it with you, expand my horizons. You want to sleep. He can't suppress a chuckle. Samir scowls. What? I can be illicit. Remember, I'm a veteran of the club scene. Samir has told Peter stories from his wilder youth that involve party drugs Peter had never heard of. Besides, I've decided it could be romantic. Romantic. Sleeping in each other's arms, all tangled up in bed, like the couples in the old movies you make us watch. I don't have a bed. Some people still have them for streaming media and reading and having sex, but Peter and Samir have found that the couches work fine for all those things. Whatever, we'll make do. Samir cocks his head. Do you not want me to do this with you? The truth is, Peter doesn't want that, not really. He's warmed by the gesture, but he's not sure he's ready to share this new corner of his world. This is a big turnaround from your attitude yesterday. And I said I was sorry about yesterday. You didn't, actually. Samir squints, trying to remember. Did I not? It was supposed to be in my opening speech. Anyway, I'm sorry. I'm trying to be more open, and before I change my mind, give me the stuff. You have to take stuff, right? Peter retrieves from a drawer in the coffee table the plastic baggie with little green capsules. His sand. Sand as in Sandman. Samir cups his hands together, then cups them the other way, then back again. It's a nervous tic of his. Are you sure it's safe, like pure and everything? I trust my guy. Who's your guy? Peter hesitates. It's Keshi, a mutual friend. Samir falls back into the couch with a sigh. Keshi sleeps too? I'm surrounded by bedheads, and I had no idea. His head snaps up. I'm sorry. Is that okay, that word? Is that offensive? Peter shrugs. He takes a seat next to Samir on the couch. I don't care. So how does this work? Samir's voice shakes a little. I just take one and then what? No, you don't want to take it now. It doesn't work right away. What it does is it neutralizes the som. It would be easier, of course, just to suspend your implant's flow of somfrene, but only your health needs provider can do that. You want to take it during your midday tomorrow. Then you can come over after work, and by then you'll be ready. Okay. After a big anxious breath, Samir accepts a green capsule into his palm. Peter never finds him more adorable than when he's nervous. He gets his way on airplanes before takeoff, too. You really don't have to do this if you don't want. I do want. Samir lays his head on Peter's shoulder. It's the first time they've touched since the confession. They hadn't even hugged goodbye last night when Peter left. There's this part of you I don't know, Peter. This faraway part. The part that hauled me off to Iceland to freeze our asses off staring at the sky. I want to know that part. Touch it. I think this might help. Peter tries to figure out what to say, how to help Samir understand. But then the bell chimes and the delivery woman from the Ethiopian place appears on the screen. Peter tries to make the place nice. He leans into what Samir said about the romance of it. He puts extra care into his makeshift bedding, moving the coffee table and pilfered cushions from both the couch and the dining room chairs to make a plush C in the living room. Then he drapes it with their favorite quilt, the one with the purple and green Bargello needlepoint that they bought on their trip to Reykjavik to see the northern lights. He lights candles and cues up something rich and spiced, called Hayride on the scent diffuser. He paces while he waits. He smiles to himself when he realizes how much this feels like a first date. When Peter opens the front door at 12:10 a.m., Samir drags himself across the threshold and collapses into the recliner. He is still in his office get-up, slacks and a slim-fit Uber button-up. One arm hangs off the chair, fingers almost to the floor, and his head droops to his chest. I feel like shit. I felt like shit all the way through my last 3 meetings. It was like someone was draining my life away. Peter grins. Yeah, you're tired. Why would anyone want to feel like this? Because you're about to get to the good part. God, I hope so. First, they eat. After the rigatoni Peter made, which turned out well, Peter is getting good at this recipe, the two of them entered the living room and stand expectantly before the bed area, awkward as teenage virgins. Okay, Samir claps his hands together. What now? You'll probably want to change into these. On the coffee table, Peter had laid out a pair of sweatpants and a t-shirt. Peter is a size bigger than Samir, and is in danger of making it 2 sizes the way he's been padding his waistline lately, but the sweats should fit. You want to be comfortable. As he watches Samir undress, Peter's heart beats faster. He almost turns away. Despite the many times that he has seen Samir naked, this exposure feels different, more dangerous. Samir puts on the sweatpants and remains shirtless, the lines of his body graceful and smooth in the flickering candlelight. Before Peter can suggest it, Samir lies down, settling into a spot on the awkward Pangea of cushions. Peter sinks down and unfurls his body alongside Samir's, one arm encircling his bare chest. Their heads rest on the couch's blue throw pillows. So, what do I do? Nothing, really. Just close your eyes, try to relax. It'll come. Peter's nose is pressed against Samir's thick, wavy, dark hair. He can smell the sweet chemical bite of hair product. Don't you worry about the time it takes up? Samir asks after a minute. Like, don't you think about the overtime you could have made tonight if you had picked up an extra shift, or we could be at the gym? The mention of the gym feels like a subtle reprimand. Samir goes at midday almost every day. Peter has to wrestle with himself to make it there twice a week. But now we're going to lose those hours, just wasted time. Peter thinks of the anti-sleeping government ad currently in rotation on the screens at the train station. It shows a fat man splayed out in sleep, hairy belly hanging out of the bottom of his stained t-shirt, mouth gaping, slobber trickling out. The text below says, "Don't waste your," and a bunch of words in big block letters flicker in succession to complete the sentence. Time, potential, money, night, opportunities, day, and finally it ends on life. With one finger, Peter traces the rivulet in the middle of Samir's chest, teasing its small tuft of hair. That phrase never really made sense to me. Wasted time. What are these other things I'm supposed to be doing with it? And why does everyone else care so much? Peter can feel Samir's shoulders tense. I care because we're partners, because we're supposed to share a life. I didn't mean you. Peter listens to the twin sound of their breathing as he tries to match Samir's rhythm. I don't think it's working, Samir says. Is there something else I should be doing? Stop trying. You can't make it happen. Think about something else. Taking his own advice, Peter thinks about their trip to Iceland. Maybe he thinks of it because it was the only time they laid together side by side like this, doing nothing. They don't linger after sex. Samir is up and off to the couch within minutes, redressing, checking his phone. In Iceland, they laid together for hours under this quilt and watched the aurora borealis. Green mist billowing, crashing into itself. Purple waves dancing through the black. In the weeks leading up to that trip, Samir had cracked caustic jokes about how boring it would be, but there, under the lights, he became very quiet, and Peter knew then that they were both under the same spell. Peter could have watched that sky forever. Soon he drifts off. In his dream, Peter bobs on a small inflatable raft on a lake. Boats shoot past him, propelled by vast, swollen sails. He understands, this fascinates Peter, how in the dreams he understands all sorts of rules and conditions about the landscape without being told. He understands that the boats are in a race, the biggest race of the season. Suddenly the blasting winds bring massive dark clouds and lashing rain. A sailboat blares a deep, bone-rattling horn at Peter. His raft is obstructing the race. A long, slick, white bow bears down on him. But Peter only has a plastic oar, like the kind he used as a child when his family went canoeing. No matter how hard he strokes, it is maddeningly difficult to move through the water. Peter just barely avoids the boat. Its wake picks up the raft and tosses it into the path of another racer. This new boat dings a bell at him. Sails whip loudly in the gale and men shout commands over the roar of the storm. The rain feels wonderful running through Peter's hair, soaking his shirt, falling into his panting mouth. The depressed center of the raft, where he kneels, fills with water. He dodges more boats. He has to get to shore. After more frantic paddling, he nears the shoreline, and the weather lets up. A 3-story Victorian house looms on the bank, with a long wooden dock leading to its front door. He understands that there is something mythical and very precious in the house that he needs to see. He digs at the water, heaving with breath, until he is almost at the dock. But he's jerked awake by a hand grabbing his wrist. Samir is turned towards him, eyes huge black discs in the candlelight. He's breathing heavy. What is it? Peter asks. What happened? I didn't like that. Did you fall asleep? Yes, or I started to. Samir struggles to his knees and then to his feet, wobbling on the uneven cushions. He dashes to the kitchen. Babe, what's the matter? A minute later, Samir returns, clutching a glass of ice water with both hands. He orders the lights on. Peter shields his eyes against the bright. I really didn't like that. Samir's eyes are still wild and frightened. Peter props himself on his elbows, mind still cloudy. Didn't like what? At first, I was just laying there thinking, when is it going to happen? Then I said something and you didn't answer, so I knew it had already happened to you. He takes a shaky sip of water. After a while, I got distracted, and then all of a sudden, things got really weird. I couldn't hold on to my thoughts. It felt like melting away. Yeah, then you just go with it. Go with it? Samir's fear flashes to anger. How could you just go with it? Why would you want to go with it? It was like I knew that in the next moment I would be gone. Just not there anymore. Gone. His breathing gets rapid again, his shirtless chest filling and collapsing. Like dying. It was like what dying must be like. Peter thinks about this. I guess, yeah. Before it was like people used to die every day. Close their eyes, let it all go, reappear in the morning. He leans back, head in the basket of his hands. But it's not quite the same because you don't dream when you die. Or maybe you do. I don't know. He sits up and waits until Samir looks him in the eye. I think the dreams are why I do it. He asks Samir to sit down next to him, and he tries to describe the dream of the boat race. That's it, Samir asks. That's all it was. Does it mean something? Maybe. I don't know. I think they're sort of like the paintings, the ones in your apartment. Like they mean something, but you can't really say what. Samir sweeps his hand towards the 2 VR headbands on the entertainment center. You could be on any boat you wanted, whenever you want. These sleep dreams, you don't even get to control them. I think that's what I like about them. He reaches for Samir's hand. Maybe we could try again. Maybe if you got all the way under, if you dreamed. No. Samir rolls off the cushion, stands, and starts to dress. This isn't for me. He buttons his shirt. You don't have to try. I didn't ask you to try. I know. I wanted to. I wanted this to work. He wriggles into his shoes. Peter tries to think of something else to say. Something that might stop this. Might turn things around. He considers, I love you, or I'm sorry, I don't know how to explain it better, or do you remember Iceland? But none of these seem right, so he says nothing. Samir walks out the door and eases it shut behind him. He lays his head back down on a pillow. Even as he tries to convince himself to get up and go after Samir, Peter is angry with him for ruining the dream. Now he'll never know what was in the house on the shore. He closes his eyes and focuses on the dream. The rainwater running down his back, the warped, moldering wood of the dock. He tries to fall back into it, but he knows it doesn't work that way. A dream interrupted is gone forever. He wraps himself in the Iceland quilt and lies still. He wonders what it would be like to go back to Reykjavik alone. Would the lights look the same? Would the spell be as strong, with only one person lying under the quilt? Or maybe he'll go somewhere else in Iceland, away from the tourist parts. He's read about a village there where no one takes Somfreen, where everyone sleeps away their nights. He's seen pictures. It looks quiet there. Maybe he'll go visit that place and maybe he won't come back. He tries to imagine that life, but over and over his thoughts circle back to Samir. He will be on the train by now, swaying back and forth with its jostling, clinging to a hand strap, exhausted and scared. Peter thinks about trying to call him. He doesn't. There's nothing left to say. He flips the pillow and turns onto his side. His arm is pinched uncomfortably, so he rolls onto his back again. This doesn't feel right either, so he tries the other side. He closes his eyes and waits. He waits for a long time. As the minutes become an hour, Peter finds that something is happening that has not happened before. He can't sleep. Discussion questions. Number 1. If you could take a pill and give up sleeping with absolutely no side effects, would you do it? Why or why not? Number 2. Regarding whether he's curious about dreaming, Samir says, quote, no more than I'm curious about what it's like to have tuberculosis or shit in an outhouse. We've solved those problems. Why would I want to go back? Is that true? Is dreaming simply a, quote, problem to be solved? Number 3. If falling asleep were made illegal through a democratic process, would you give it up? Do you think illegally sleeping could be a gateway action that would lead you to do other illegal activities? Number 4. Would you be willing to take part in an illegal activity that your partner was doing so that you could share the experience with them? Number 5. Do you think dreaming, both good and bad dreams, serves an important role? If so, what role is that? If you could stop sleeping and dreaming with no side effects, do you think it would change the choices you make? If so, how? That brings us to the end of our story and our discussion questions. Thank you once again for joining us. I always enjoy reading these to you. I hope you enjoy listening to them. Please subscribe to our podcast and share it with your friends. If you enjoyed this story, head over to our companion podcast, After Dinner Conversation Discussions, and listen to our discussions of this and other short stories from our magazine. We'll include a link in the description. And of course, you can always continue the discussion on our webpage in the comments section and on our Facebook page. Thank you for joining us. Bye.